Hey there guys, it's Alejandro with Midheaven Vanguard here, bringing you a brand new deck profile for Hound Raiser Ailey. I've been playing her quite a bit recently, and she has surprisingly become one of my favorite decks. Maybe it's because I have a dog myself that I rescued about almost 2 years ago, but I've become very attached to it. I enjoy the playstyle. It has a lot of things that I like about Keter Sanctuary in it, plus having like a unique hard archetype while still using some of the quote-unquote Keter pile stuff. And I also, as much as I also drew the thumbnail, I also made these stickers. Maybe I'll put like my link for Etsy down below and put these on there. I have some like Vanguard buttons on there too. But if you guys want to see me do more like Vanguard stickers, whether they're more like proportional like this or chibi ones, let me know. Definitely glad to do more. I love drawing the thumbnails and making the comics, and I think they bring a really unique part to our channel. So more than that, we'll go ahead and go onto the deck profile. So let me go ahead and get into the ride line. For my grade 0, I am playing Hound Raiser Kilka. It's just your normal starter. You're not locked into the archetype with this one. So, and you'll see like I have a card in here. It's tech that you could potentially play like the undercover grade 0 and get a little bit more synergy out of it. But I think for now, this is actually just quite fine because I prefer a different combo to use for the ride line. And then for my grade 1, Hound Raiser Isumi. Now, the grade 1 and the grade 2 of the ride line both have a rearguard and Vanguard skill. The grade 1's rearguard skill is not anything that's crazy. If it's boosted by a high beast, it gets plus 2k. So I don't really ever see a case to play this one in the main deck. But its on-ride skill is pretty good. When ridden on by Hakuden, which is the grade 2, you're going to look at the top 7 cards and you choose one high beast from them and call it to rearguard, which is really cool. So, and it doesn't even actually grade restrict it. So if they ever down the road make better grade 2s high beasts, right now, I guess a little sneak preview, I don't want any of the grade 2 high beasts because mostly you want to see the grade 1s. It's a heavy grade 1 deck, but the deck still does a whole lot with it. But you look at top 7 and you get to call one, so pretty really simple. Unfortunately, there's no like backup for if you like whiff on it. If you whiff on it, you whiff. But hopefully with this deck, you're not gonna whiff. But it has happened a couple times. And then this is Hakuden. Now Hakuden has a pretty decent rearguard skill that when it's boosted by a high beast, you choose a high beast normal unit from your drop put on the bottom of the deck. So you could potentially put a couple of these in the main deck if you want. I personally don't, because if you end up whiffing off of his on-ride skill, you can actually call him out and soul charge one. But his when wrote upon skills, look at the top 7 cards of your deck and choose a unit with Hound Raiser and its card name from among them, reveal it, put it in hand, shuffle the deck. And if you don't reveal a card, that's when you would call it to rearguard circle and then soul charge to kind of replace the soul because this deck needs soul. So he's not bad. So as long as you with that one, you still get him, which is pretty cool. That's a good opportunity to be able to add like your Persona Ride or some of the other rearguards because you can really rebuild your board from like next to nothing with this deck, which is really cool. And then here, of course, is your Vanguard, everything that your deck is built around. She has a few different skills. She says all of your back row high beasts get plus 5,000 power, so you get a little bit of good power scaling there. And then she has 2 once per turn skills. The first one is to Soul Blast 2, and you search your deck for any high beast. Just once per turn, or call it to a rearguard circle, shuffle your deck. And like I said, it's not limited on grade. You can effectively call out grade 2 like high beasts with her if that ever becomes relevant in future like card releases. That's the cool thing about this deck. This deck pretty much will always get support if they ever just make one-off generic high beasts, which there's quite a bit in Keter. And then she has a once per turn skill, which is to counter blast 1, choose one of your grade 1 or less back row center column high beasts until end of turn. That can attack from the back row. And then if your opponent is on grade 3, it'll actually perform a drive check. After it attacks, it'll restand and it cannot attack again. So the idea behind it is you call grade 1 back here high beast, you pay the cost, and you choose that unit. You pretty much sequencing wise, you'll attack with it first, it'll get a drive check, it restands, and then you get to boost. So even if you have to like put power to that grade 1, it's not going to be wasted because then you're able to put that to your Vanguard, which is really cool. I love that combination. There's a lot of really cool lines of plays that you can do. Well, let's go ahead and get to the rest of the deck. Start with the grade 3s. So of course, 3 Persona Rides, pretty simple. You want to be able to Persona Ride, you can just get better numbers. And then this is one of the funniest units I have ever seen them design for an archetype, especially so right off the bat. So he does a few different things. So he has one of his skills is a utility. All your high beasts on your rearguard circle get intercept and can intercept from the back row. That kind of reminds me of like how much fun I used to have with like Malkuth Melik and being able to intercept with like my back row units and get a lot of value that way. So you do have some good synergy right there to be able to get some more like shield value, be able to get some value out of like your rear guards on board, especially if your opponent has like the ability to retire back rows like a second attack like Varga or something like that. Now, granted, if they start with Varga, you're going to lose your front row, but regardless, his other skill is when this unit attacks while boosted by a high beast, if you have a Vanguard with Hound Raiser in its name, till end of this battle, it gets plus 5k. And then if your opponent has a grade 3 or greater, if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, you Energy Blast 3, and he gets crit plus 1. So this is the high pressure unit. This is the one that when I'm playing against like board removal decks, they are like trying to erase this guy from just like existence because of that ability just to pick up a crit without you needing to get a crit. And because this deck can thin out and decompress, you're just really able to get that like crit pressure. Like that sweet spot of your opponent being at 4 is like really crazy because like your back row rear guard picks up the drive check. You know, they're not wanting to like one card guard, that kind of sort of thing, because if you do one to pass, it could be like really threatening. So you have a lot of high pressure, and then your columns get pretty big, especially with your order. So that's the grade 3s. Now we're going to get to the only grade 2 we play in the deck until the next set, of course, and that is Hound Raiser Michiro. She is a really cool card. So she is, when placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have a Vanguard with Hound Raiser in its name, you Canal Blast 1, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose the one grade 1 or less high beast from among them, call to Rearguard Shuffle the deck, and if you did not call a card, you just immediately countercharge. So if you whiff, you don't have to like get punished by that cost, which is really cool. And Weasel, the other ones could call out any grade high beast. She is restricted to only calling out grade 1s, which is why like I prefer having the heavy grade 1 package, especially considering, you know, that's the back row center. You're really interacting mostly with the grade 1s. And another skill is when this attacks while boosted by a high beast, you may soul charge 1, so it's not mandatory, so you can electively do it. And then if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, and you have 2 or more back row high beasts, this gets plus 10k in a battle. So she gets pretty fairly big as well, especially with your other combos and cards that you can create, which is really cool. So a really cool card. And what I also like about her too is her on play skill is not restricted to like main phase, battle phase, from hand, right? Like she can be called from like anywhere. And while that isn't really relevant too much in standard, besides like Topaz, which I'll get to, you know, if you top 5 Topaz to get this, then you can like literally have like half a board from like just one card, not even using any cards from hand, because you can use your Vanguard to search out Topaz. But in premium, I'm playtesting a like Royal Paladin version of the deck, and like if you use like the Stride of the Yodalist, who like on attack, Canal Blast 1, call card, draw and call cards from your hand, you can like get really nice board extension from her, which is really cool. She's a really fun unit. I like her quite a bit. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of the deck, which is going to be like your grade 1 high beasts. So these are all the grade 1s I have. So there's Sergaion. This deck is a Sergaion deck. You know, you guys know what it does. As long as you have more rearguards than your opponent, or if you played a normal order, you get plus 5k. At the end of the battle, you retire it, look at top 2 cards, add 1 to your hand, bottom deck. And because this deck shuffles quite a bit, because you're always searching every turn, getting to thin out your deck of getting all the cards that aren't triggers into your hand, digging out for certain pieces like your orders, your Persona Rise, things like that, you know, more units for your next turn, PGs, etc. You're really able to take advantage. Now, obviously, you can't recycle these the same way that you would like you would in Reziel, being able to call them from the drop. And that's why like you could consider running the grade 2 from the right line in the main deck, because, you know, you could always like boost and call and have him out there. But it's not necessary. I think once you get to a certain point, you don't want to deck yourself out. And if you're worried about running out of high beasts, a part of the more unique part of my build actually plays with that concept, and I'll get to that in a bit because it's going to be about energy management. But I do think Sergaion is really cool. The nice thing about Sergaion too is if you're playing against a deck like Artazaria and you're afraid they're going to walk your back row center, you can call someone like Sergaion, who is going to disappear himself as long as you have more rearguards than your opponent. So you can like drive check, he'll be 13,000 because of AoE skill, and then he restands, and then you boost, and then he'll gain another 5,000, so he'll be an 18k booster behind your Vanguard. And then letting to get you that extra card out of after you like drive check. So you go like +4 during that phase, and you dodge any sort of like board removal, especially considering you have decks like Basagra, which they'll loop the hammer in order to like kill the back row. So Sergaion, invaluable card in this deck. He is a good doggo, which is why on the sticker I had to draw her with Sergaion. And then this is one of the new main deck supports. Melgaion is an infinitely useful card. So when you place him on Rearguard Circle, if you have a Vanguard with Hound Raiser in its card name, you can either soul charge 1 or you can energy charge 1. And this is where like your resource management really comes into play. Now, effectively, if you were like persona writing, you maybe only ever need to soul charge like once in a game because you get the soul blast 2 for your Vanguard skill. You have nothing else in this deck that's soul blasting, so like you're kind of, you might need to like try to play ahead of like, oh no, I don't have a persona right on my next turn, let me just play one of these and soul charge, kind of refill. But I personally really like using them to fill the energy up really, really fast. And then the other skill that it has, that if it's in the back row, it gets 5k, and if it's in the back row center and your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 10k instead. So with Aoi's skill, you're gonna get, it's going to be a 23k attacker in the back row, so 23 with the drive check. It's a really awkward card to guard because like they can't just use like a trigger to make it like 2 to pass yeah, because they're gonna put themselves at 28 and like suddenly this thing is hitting for like a magic enough number. It's even bigger than what your Vanguard is when you're on the first grade 3 turn without using any like other skills that can make it bigger. So Melgaion, infinitely useful card, probably like the best like high beast that came out in this set to support the deck, which is really cool. One of these days they're going to print a high beast that has Hound Raiser in the name, and it's going to be just crazy. Now, before we get into my like personal tech, let's talk about Topaz, which is just like the MVP of the deck. Topaz is a high beast, and it's a grade 1, so it perfectly works in line. And while it doesn't gain any additional power, Topaz just is such a great utility card. Like if you're at a certain point in the game, you just use your Vanguard's ability to Soul Blast 2, and you Soul Blast 2 of the ride line, you call out Topaz, and then you immediately get to use Topaz's skill right then and there. And let's say you did that like late game and you haven't seen this one, or it hit like the damage zone for your second copy, but you have the grade 3 rear guard that picks up the crit. What's cool about this is during your opponent's turn, you're able to, I'll pull it back, with his skill right here, you're able to use your high beast in the back row here to intercept. So you can actually go and then have that guard, and then you can do the same thing where you have your last 2 pieces of your ride line go face up in the deck, which is why I like, when we get to my next combo, why I chose to keep not the starter that I was going to. But Topaz is just super, super useful card. Being able to help build board, I mean, if you end up calling, if you end up on the top 5 and you end up seeing the grade 2 for the deck, then you end up getting like a 1, 2, 3, and you just like filled up like half your rear guard circles, and you maybe only have to call like 1 or 2 from hand if you're trying to refill your board from just like empty. So super, super fantastic card. Topaz gets a lot of energy. I'm trying to get full frame rares. I feel like I've been trying to get full frame rares for such a long time. I had an order a while back that ended up like getting canceled, and it was when it was like $25 still. So hey, if you got full frame rares, let me know. I'll pick them up. And then this is my personal tech. Now, before I get into why I choose this one, let me tell you about the card that I also think that it's perfectly fine and valid to run over it. So this is Regaion. It's another one of the Hound Raiser support that came out in this set. If you have a Vanguard with Hound Raiser, it gets all the following. It has to be a grade 3 or greater. So that's the unfortunate part, is that it's just a vanilla until you're on grade 3. But if it's in the back row center, when it attacks, your opponent would have to call a card from their hand. They would call 2 or more at the same time. So it is useful to get that guard restrict, right? But effectively speaking, if you have Melgaion at 23k, your opponent's already kind of going for a 2-card guard. And even with the 13, right, if they put a trigger behind them, it's 28. So it is useful in that regard. But the other one still creates a 2-card guard situation. And then the other big useful thing is that, again, as long as you're on grade 3, it gets plus 5k shield. So it becomes a 10k shield. So of course, when you intercept with the grade 3 allowing you to intercept, it's a 10k shield. And then, like I said, it gets that guard restrict. And I do like using it. Last night at Locals, I actually tested the Undercover Tigris, because one of the weaknesses of this deck, in my opinion, is the write-up. Your write-up is equally the best thing and like the worst thing about this deck, because its rush capability is crazy. But the problem with the deck is you don't have anything you want to discard. Discarding triggers means that you're like discarding shield. Putting cycle units in the deck, like Biscotti or Spiral Cutie Angel, means that you're putting cards in the deck that you're that are not high beasts, right? You're going to be losing a lot of value that way. And so you end up becoming pinched in a room, or you don't have enough high beasts and you run out of high beasts, because you've either seen them too much, pull them in the deck, and next thing you know, you can't fill the board with your high beasts and do what the deck wants to do. So this does a few different utilities. So at the end of the battle, it's boosted, you Energy Blast 2, and you return it to hand. And because of Melgaion, you're able to kind of like recharge your energy, especially considering this is a deck that, depending on the matchup, like for example Odium, I don't want to go second against. But most decks I actually go second against. I think going second with this deck is actually, you pick up the drive check when going second, which is really, really useful. Plus you get the extra card in your hand from drawing by going second. Plus you're able to rush your opponent even faster by like being able to attack on your grade 1 turn, being able to attack on your grade 2 turn as well. And then of course you get the extra energy, which gives you the value to be able to use a card like this, as well as the grade 3 and the order that we play in the deck. I really haven't found myself in a situation where like I run out of energy in the game because of being able to call Melgayon and fix my energy situation, using this a couple times. This is also another card like Sargayon that also disappears itself. So like, if you're worried about playing against a deck that like locks and you don't have Sargayons with you, you get to add this back to your hand. Now, its other useful skill is that when it's placed on the Guardian Circle, you put a card with Undercover in its card name from the drop to the bottom of the deck, and it gets plus 5k shield. And these have Undercover. So these are going to be your only Undercover target. That's why I mentioned before with a starter, if you use the Undercover starter, you could get the shield live by the minute you like Soul Blast. But I don't think it's necessary because, again, you want to be able to use Topaz twice in the game. And that's not worth just the extra 5k shield to get rid of like Topaz. You can like rebuild your board after like being board cleared, and just being able to back those add to your hand gets you like card value too as well. Plus it lets you discard them on the write up, so that way like let's say you've got 1 or 2 of these already discarded, then you can use Aoi's skill to call one from the deck, and then use it as your attack on that turn, and then Energy Blast 2 and add it to your hand after like it's done boosting, after you've already attacked with it. So you get that value in your hand, and plus you'll always have like a high beast that you can play. So it being able to add it back to your hand plus bottom decking the other ones will always give you like a long extension. At locals last night, I literally won one of my games because I was able to like loop these so much. It gave me a ton of value right there. So that's it for the grade 1s. Let's go ahead, before I get on to like the usual stuff, let's go ahead and talk about orders. Here's the Regulus piece that I play. It's Bracing Angel Ladder. It's pretty simple. It gives you soul, 5k to your Vanguard, draws you a card, and then it also like protects your board. Again, we're in a meta where Basagra is running around or Zarya is running around. So just getting to have this in there just helps you out. Plus it gives you soul to make sure that your Vanguard is not going to run out of soul to be able to keep doing her ability. So Bracing Angel is really, really nice, especially considering you have your grade 3 that gives your units the ability to intercept. And sometimes against those matchups, you want those units to be able to stay, which is really cool. So I think Bracing Ladder is simple. You could also consider running like Caliburn, which lets you draw 2, or even Countercharge, because that one also goes into soul. But I think Bracing Angel Ladder is just fine. You're not using Counterblast that much, just like your Vanguard absolutely every turn. And then my favorite order, and this has been one of my favorite orders ever since it came out in Divines. It's something that like I was actually playing in Rezael for the longest time until Nilberis came out and like just took all my energy. This card is Energy Blast 2. Choose 2 of your units, and they get during the battle of this unit boosted, and it's on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. They get 10,000 until end of turn, and then if you have 5 or more units, you draw a card. So what's really cool is versus like T-Fault that can't take advantage of an order like this, you want the board established already, and then you play this, and then you get the card draw of it. So it replaces itself while also making those columns just really, really big. Like a really, really good example is if you have the grade 3 that picks up a crit, and then you've got Melgayon in the back row. During Persona Ride, right? So like you start off at 21,000, and then Melgayon has another 10,000 power because of AoE and his own skill. So you go from 21 to 31, and then with Persona Ride, it's 41, and then when he attacks, he picks up 5k, so he becomes 46. But then when you use a Warrior's Rest, if he was one of your targets, he becomes 56 with 2 crits, and that's without a single trigger being checked. And like I said, you get your opponent in that like 4 damage situation from like rushing them. Suddenly that like 56 column for like 2 crits is just eating up their hand or just winning you the game right there. And this card also works on grade 2, which is really, really solid. So you can like rush your opponent. Unfortunately, last night in the games that I lost, I only ever saw like the order once, and it would be like late game, and I would have like 15 cards left in my deck, and like 10 of them were triggers, and like 3 of them were orders, and it was just like a bad situation. I'm like, I've never seen that happen where I like just whiffed off of drive checks despite my compression being really crazy, considering my deck was so thinned out. They were close games, but that was just bad luck. It's not a reflection of the deck, I don't think. I'm not going to say this deck is like a tier 1 deck, but it's a fully capable deck of doing really, really well in this meta, and it's also just genuinely fun to play, and I think fun decks are absolutely valid. We're going to get into the technical stuff here. So 4 PGs. I could play Elementary on this. I just usually when I'm testing out new decks, I usually keep the Elementary like in my main deck, but I've been kind of playing this deck as my main deck, so I might start like trying to go for a higher rarity in it. And then of course you 4 heal triggers, 4 critical. There's 8 critical triggers, but there's 4 blade feathers. Which, I mean, if you want to fix your soul, that's always useful. But they're Cosmo Dragons, so that's not going to be as effective. What is effective though is having this High Beast crit trigger, which unfortunately these guys are now $3 a pop. They came in the Quick Start deck with Sir Rosbael, but then they also came in as a reprint, I think, in like the Festival Collection last year. But he's useful because he's a High Beast. Now, obviously, you don't want to have to call a crit to the board, but let's say you're in a situation where you need to against your opponent. The cool thing about these versus like Blade Feather Angel, Blood Feather Angel only has 4,000 power, so that 4,000 actually matters because it doesn't create magic numbers for you. The extra 2,000 might for another column, but that's like the trade-off of getting soul is you lose the magic numbers. Whereas with the vanilla ones, they have 5k. That plus 5k actually matters. It actually changes how much your opponent's going to potentially guard. But even more so is that they gain another 5k from your Vanguard, so they become 10k boosters. So like literally not the worst thing in the world. It's not like ideal, but it's another High Beast, and you can technically call it from the deck, which is really, really funny. But hey, it's there if you have it. Plus, it's cool on theme, and I like being extremely thematic. And then now for the Overt Trigger, actually I'll get the Overt Trigger last. And then I have 3 front triggers. Now, I think front triggers is great for the deck, especially considering you're wanting to give the buff to both rear guards on the front row. So that way, after like you attack, especially if you like attack with your your High Beast and you hit the front trigger, then you get to attack with your Vanguard, then your columns are just massive. I might consider trying draws out. I'll have to see. I'm not decking out. I think maybe one game I had come close to it. Arzaria is like a really tanky matchup, but like you can usually break through their like defensives with like the high crit value you get on the rear guards. So far, my playtesting, I think front triggers have been the best, but you can make a value for like maybe going a rainbow with the deck. But I think the crit pressure is just really crazy with the deck, so considering how much you thin it out. And then my personal preference right now is just Aegis of Fairy. In general, though, this is like my favorite Overt Trigger, right? One of the reasons why the red Overt Trigger does not work in this deck is because you're typically attacking with your back row rear guard and then your Vanguard next, so you're not really going for like the multi-attack. I think playing for your red Overt Trigger would be kind of the craziest thing in the world. And then the same thing goes with like the dark Overt Trigger, right? The purple one, where you add a card from your damage zone to your hand and you call a card. I think that is a useful card because you can just heal and get a card that you might be needing in your damage zone. I like those toolboxy aspects of it. Then you also have like the yellow Overt Trigger, which board clears your opponents and you draw cards. That one also is potentially a good one, but I always just prefer the 100 million crit and then getting to choose something from my drop that I need. It's pretty simple. I like that flavor. I like that ability to adapt to like my game state. Sometimes you check it too early and you just don't have anything to grab, but still, it's the Overt Trigger's Overt Trigger, and I think you can play with that on personal preference. But I think like this Overt Trigger or the yellow Overt Trigger are like probably the most important. You could even make a case that the Keter Overt Trigger is not terrible in this deck, considering you have a grade 3 rear guard and you could build up high pressure with like 100 million drive track with 2 drives, and he already has a crit when he attacks. Maybe I'll try experimenting with that. I do largely think the Keter Overt Trigger is not very, very good, but hey, 100 million of the crit is just kind of crazy, especially if you check it with your booster and then you break their guard, and now you have 100 million booster on top of like your Vanguard drive check. So anyways, guys, that is Hound Raiser. We're hopefully going to bring you guys some more content. We actually do have an idea for a lore fight video, and if you guys want to see more stuff, let us know. We have a lot of stuff we've been testing from set 7. We like this set a lot. We're also extremely anticipating set 8. I know Jack is with Youth Work. It's like all he can think about. So guys, stay tuned. Thank you so much, and if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you guys for the support. We broke 800 subs. We're going to try to hit 1,000 if we can.